Okay, so today here with us, I have Amanda, and she is from our community. She's a badass. She's been around for a while, and she has things to share. So, Amanda, thank you for being with us and for chatting with me. It's really lovely to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, where do you want to start? I mean, you've had quite a journey, and there's a lot to unpack. So, where do you want to start?
I guess I could just start with um, when I was diagnosed with cancer in 2017. I was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia, which is something. It's one of the ones that you don't really have time to make decisions. Like you can't say, "Oh, I want to try doing this," alternative medicine way, or try diets or whatever. You kind of just your choices are like chemo or die kind of. Um, so I was kind of thrown into that, and I ended up going through 7 rounds of chemo and a bone marrow transplant and 5 rounds of radiation. Um, and I was at the very beginning of my journey. I started reading about diet um, and I was reading about being vegetarian or vegan, being plant based. The book that I read originally actually was a lot more strict than what I started with. It was kind of like really raw food only, mostly fruit and juices and things like that. But I wasn't wanting to go that hardcore when I was doing chemo because it was so hard to eat as it was. So I just I just switched to vegan right away and started eating just vegan food. And it was just kind of the junk food stuff mostly. Like I wasn't eating any animal products, but I wasn't eating the healthy stuff. Um, and as my journey kind of progressed, it was like basically I was doing treatments for about 3 years straight. And there was one point before I was going to go in for a bone marrow transplant, and I didn't want to. But my family really wanted me to, and because the doctors kept saying the statistics were saying that I was going to die if I didn't do this. So my family would, every time I would tell them I don't want to do this, I want to try to do this with food. I want to heal myself with food. My family was very upset. They didn't want me to do that, and so eventually, for them, I went through with the bone marrow transplant. Um, and it was hard and it sucked, but I got through it. I did relapse one more time after the transplant, and that was when I had I call it my worst chemo because it was my last chemo, but it almost killed me. I ended up in the ICU. It was really hard on my body, and I lost a whole bunch of weight. I was just like 97 pounds and 5'4", so that's like, I don't know, I was kind of like a skeleton. Um, and so after that, my doctor, after I got through that, my doctor said, I want you to be on this thing that she called, like, I call forever chemo, where you're kind of just like on this chemo once a week forever until you die, basically. And I told her no. I was like, my body says no. I say no. My entire being was just screaming, no more, you know. So I stopped chemo, and I told her that I was going to go to California on this raw vegan retreat. And she was like, no, you can't do that. You have to stay here and do chemo. So I kind of fired my doctor and I got a different doctor. And that doctor was really supportive of my trip. Um, and I had two doctors at the time, one that had done my bone marrow transplant, and the one that was here with, they were in different places. So I had two doctors in different places. They were both supportive, and they said that as long as I got blood draws while I was there, they were fine with me going. So my husband, who is a was a big meat eater at the time, like he went with me, and we did this 3 weeks straight of raw vegan food, no salt, no sugar, no oil, like very clean organic food. And it was tough at first to get used to that kind of thing. But after a week, I started feeling so much better. I was in a wheelchair at the time. And after about a week, I started to be able to move and walk without my wheelchair. There was a lot of, wasn't just food there. They also did like mind and spirit kind of stuff as well. So we did a lot of meditations and movement and things like that, sound healing. And by the end of it, I was pretty much out of my wheelchair. I could move again. And I felt like I had a purpose for life again after all of that. And I really felt like I was on this, like I had really detoxed from my chemo. And when I came back from that trip, I continued the raw vegan diet for a while, but it wasn't sustainable. It was not only kind of boring at times, but it was very hard to get the good food made. It was like you had to use a dehydrator and you had to like, you know, have all this pulp and make crackers and all these different things to kind of keep it interesting. And it was too much work. So that was kind of around the time that I found you guys. And I started to slowly I started with the blog recipes and I really enjoyed those. And then I eventually, it took, I think I was a part of the Facebook group for a year, but after a year or so, I joined and I started to batch and it became my new thing. And I just loved the food and it was just way more sustainable for me to continue to eat healthy. And I've now been in remission for 4 years. So that's just amazing to me that, you know, this has done this for me. And not only that, but when I went vegan, I had, before I had cancer, I'd also had IBS and acid reflux. And just going vegan got rid of that completely. So like I had healed from IBS and acid reflux, and I believe cancer as well, by doing this, by eating this way.
Mm. Wow, that's a really, really powerful story. Thank you for sharing that. Oh, wow, where to even start? You know, I'm curious, what is the treatment center that you went to? Because I just know that people are going to be wondering about that. Do you mind sharing the name of it?
Oh yeah, the raw vegan one,
Mm-hmm.
the Optimum Health Institute,
Okay.
and it's kind of, I think it's right by San Diego, California. So
Okay. So when you were first diagnosed, how old were you? Just to give context.
I was 34, just about to turn 35.
Yeah, so you were young, really young. And so at that point, when you were given that diagnosis and kind of the prognosis of like chemo or die, like, I mean, I can't imagine that was a great day.
No, it wasn't.
But I'm just wondering, like, how you got through that initial sort of like gut punch, I imagine.
Yeah, it was really a shock. I had bruises all over my legs. I had been feeling really tired and having trouble breathing.
Mm.
And I had gone to the doctor the day I got diagnosed. I'd gone to the doctor and I just said, you know, this has been going on for a while. My legs are all bruised. Like, you know, what's going on? I can't breathe. And so they're, okay, let's take some blood. And they did that and sent me home. And then we got a call from the on-call doctor saying, like, you need to go to the hospital right now. Your blood counts are all weird. You've got your hemoglobin is low. Like everything was just off the charts and weird. And he's like, we're worried about leukemia. And when he said that, I was like, there's no way I have leukemia. That's not real. People don't get that. Like I just didn't believe that it could actually happen to me, you know? So we got to the hospital and they let us in right away. And they got me in and they started running all these tests and they had to give me blood because my hemoglobin was so low and my platelets were so low. So they had to give me blood and the doctor came in, the hematologist came in and said, hey, you know, you have leukemia. And I was like, is there any way that I don't? He's like, no, you do. And he just sat there and stared at me. And I didn't cry or anything because I was in complete shock. And I think he was waiting for that reaction, but I didn't give it to him. So eventually he finally went away and I went to the bathroom and I came back and I just gave my husband a hug and I'm like, this feels like a nightmare. Like it just feels like I'm going to wake up and this isn't going to be real. But it was obviously real. And I think, you know, the next day when we started to get, like everything started to happen, like they started to put in all the the things that they needed to start the chemotherapy and all of that. And I had to meet all these different doctors, and it was just like a hustle and bustle. But every single piece of news I found, I just started crying. And I had all this wonderful team of people around me. This nurse that just was amazing, and I just loved her so much, and she really helped me through a lot of it. But it took some inner strength on my part. But like from the very beginning, at least for the first round, the second round not so much. But the first round of chemo, I was like, I'm gonna get through this. Like I told all my family members, like, I'm gonna be fine. Don't worry about me. I'm gonna get through this. And I was just like very gung ho and sure of it. So that was part of the thing, is I stayed very positive during this first round, and I was just like, this is going to be fine. I'm going to be fine.
And then the second round.
The second round was a little harder, because I was like, why am I relapsing? Like, what's going on? Why am I still getting sick? I still wasn't completely like depressed yet. Like, I still kind of was like, okay, one more round, I can do this. Like, but I was kind of like in that middle phase. And then as I kept having to have more chemo, like it just got harder and harder to deal with it, So like there was, I think it was the final round where I was having a really hard time. I didn't want to talk to anybody. Like my first few rounds, I was like, I want people here all the time. I want to talk to people. I want to have friends and family around all the time. And that round, I just didn't want anyone around ever. And if they did come, I wouldn't say anything. I would just sit there like a zombie. Like I was basically zombie Amanda that entire round of chemo. So like it's about a month time for each one. So like for a whole month, I was in that state of just like so low depressed.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, like it took so much bravery and courage, and it's like one of those things that it just, your whole world kind of turns upside down, and we don't, without ever expecting it. And, people go through this, but I've heard that so many times, like, I can't believe this is happening to me. Like, this might happen to other people, or is this even a thing that happens, and being in such shock. And I think, for a lot of people who switch, to change their lifestyle, to eat a healthy plant-based diet, or to, make, quit drinking, quit smoking, whatever. It's like, usually from what I've seen is that they have a health thing happen. It's not usually as like dramatic and traumatic as yours. So I like to talk to people, like, tell me about the decision to, kind of do this. And from what I'm hearing from you, is sort of like, it was just like a knowing that you want, like your body wanted it. When, so was there any hesitation on your part to do this, or was it a transition for you, or was it a fairly easy transition because you went to that treatment center and was kind of going through that detox period before you then did it on your own?
Yeah, I mean, because I was vegan for a while while I was going through treatment, but like when I decided to do the raw vegan retreat, it literally was kind of like a knowing or a calling. Like I felt like I had to do it. And I was so happy that my husband was on board with it, because I think that was my only hesitation, was that he was going to say, oh, it's too much money, or you can't do it, or whatever. But I think he was at that point so worried that I was going to die that he was like, we need to do everything that we can to like get you to where you need to be.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was definitely a knowing, and having that, I needed that kind of help of somebody to just make the food for me. And like, that was my only option. I couldn't go to, not that I ate McDonald's very often, but I couldn't go to McDonald's, and I couldn't go to like a vegan restaurant nearby because we didn't have a car with us. So if we did do that, we had to kind of make an effort to do it. So we just ate the food that was there, provided for us, and it was all really healthy, plant-based foods and juices. And
yeah. So for people who are listening to this or watching this and they're not sure, they're like, wait, but you said that you were eating vegan before, and then you started eating healthier, who may not know the difference between like a vegan diet and then more like a whole food plant-based diet. Can you give us an example of the kinds of foods you were eating when you went vegan versus like kind of maybe when you were in the treatment center and then when you got out?
Yeah, so right when I started being vegan, I was eating all of the processed meat products, like the processed chicken nuggets and just microwavable vegan meals and things like that. Things that were easy to have in the hospital and just heat up. And then, at the hospital, they didn't have a lot of vegan options that were healthy. So it was like, I don't even remember what they had, but it wasn't good. So, and you could have like a salad, but they didn't have dressing for you. So it was just like a plain salad. And that was just super boring for me at the time. So I just didn't do that. But so I was just basically at the time, my family was just bringing me food from home. Like they were either making me stuff or they were bringing stuff from the grocery store that I could heat up at the hospital. And then when I when I decided to eat that I needed it to be healthier, I did that raw vegan retreat, which was like literally all organic, raw vegetables and fruits, and raw vegetable and fruit juices, and some nuts or some not nuts. They didn't do nuts there, but they did seeds. So they had like seed crackers, things like that. And there was no sugar, no oil, no salt at all in any of this. And then after that, I just realized that I felt so much better being like this. And just because I knew my body still needed a little bit more detoxing, I tried to do the raw vegan for a while after that. I think we did it for like a couple of months or something before I was like, okay, I need to do something different. And then I started to eat cooked food again. But it was all after that, I stuck with the whole food, plant-based, no oil, like limited salt and no refined sugar. Yeah. That's kind of what I call my maintenance for cancer, is kind of sticking with that like 80% of the time at least.
Yeah. So not so much the processed vegan food, more like whole plant foods that are cooked into soups and salads and other like deliciousness. Yeah. So I think that like, I'm really glad that you brought that up and explained that, because I think for people who aren't maybe familiar with this way of eating, they think sort of, okay, well, I go plant-based and that means one thing. And it's like, okay, going plant-based there's like one way to do it. And it's a spectrum, just like everything is, and there you have the vegan way of eating that includes some like processed foods. And then there's, the really raw organic way of eating that's no cooked foods and just really, really a little bit more strict, I guess. And then you have whole food plant-based, which is, I think, kind of in the middle of those two. But I think it's important to recognize that like there's no wrong way to do it. Like none of those are wrong. They just serve different purposes for people at different times of their life, is what I've kind of settled on. And there are times when you are first transitioning to this way of eating where those like faux meats can be really helpful. And then there are times, as you know, when you're really detoxing and really wanting to nourish your body to the best of your ability, doing something like very strict, raw, organic, plant-based diet is amazing. And then for the maintenance, for the kind of all the time diet, like whole food plant-based can be really good. So thank you for bringing that up, because I think it's important to acknowledge that and kind of explain the difference and realize that there's no wrong or right way to do it. And there's no one way to do it either. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to get down off my soapbox now. Yeah. So, okay, let's talk about this. When you got back from the detox center and you decided not to go on the forever chemo, was that a hard decision to make? And if so, in what ways was it hard?
No, it wasn't hard at all, because it was probably the first time in my life that I understood what it meant to listen to my body. And my body was saying no. And it wasn't just my body, it was everything. My whole being was saying no, don't do this. And so like, it wasn't even a question. I just immediately said, no, I'm not doing it. And she disagreed, which is why I had to let her go as my physician, because it wasn't going to work. I had to go with what my gut told me, and that was it. So, it wasn't hard at all to make that decision.
That's so badass, because I think a lot of people, even if they have the instinct and that sort of intuition of saying no, there can be a lot of pressure from doctors, from family, from society to go a certain direction. And the fact that you were like so clear on it, that seems like you were really in line with your integrity and you could just follow that.
Yeah.
So after you made that decision, so you haven't done that and and so you've been in remission, did you say for 3 years or 4 years?
I said 4 years. I think that's right. It might be 3. I kind of keep getting it messed up.
Yeah.
It's either 3 or 4.
Okay. And so you do the like whole food plant-based like 80% of the time. You do batch cooking. I want to talk about the routine of batch cooking and what that, and maybe it didn't, maybe it did, I don't know. But for myself, batch cooking has always been something that's like a constant in my life and that's very steady. Even if there's things in my life that come up and that are hard, like batch cooking is really grounding for me. So I'm wondering if you had that same experience or not.
I think it's kind of been on and off for me. Like, I remember when I had energy to do all gourmet plans and do them every week without fail. And then when the simple plans came out, I was like, oh my gosh, they're so much easier. And it was like a huge relief. And I'm still doing simple plans, and I just started working for the first time in 5 years. And so that's kind of thrown things out of the loop again or whatever. But I've kind of have to reevaluate and figure out how to squeeze in batching again. But batching like had become a very, very regular thing. I did it every single week, no issue. And it was the thing that I love about it is that it made everything so much easier during the week. And I always had these meals and they were always good and delicious. And, my husband said that he really enjoys the food that I make now. And he said that he supports, because sometimes the grocery bill can be kind of expensive, especially with all the inflation and everything. But he supports what I do with it. So he really likes the food. And so that just really helped me to continue to do it because he liked it and he's eating the food with me, right? So that made it easier as well. But I also just needed to make it a priority for myself, because when I have the really good food batched in the fridge, that's what I'm going to eat, right? But when I don't, then it's like, okay, I'm going to go out to eat and not eat as healthy as I would if I would have had batched. So
yeah. It makes it's like a little insurance policy that you create for yourself. Like, I'm going to do this now and have it later. So yeah, I agree. So some people like start this way of eating and change to a really healthy lifestyle and enjoy it and like it. And some people carry on with that. And then it's just their life and they don't think about it. They just do it. And that just becomes who they are and part of their routine. And some people start and then stop and then sort of eat the way that they were eating before. So I'm wondering, like, did your diagnosis and your treatment and everything that you went through, do you think that that is like one of the anchors that keeps you kind of doing it?
Yeah, I do. And sometimes I even will I'll read another book about it just to almost just reiterate, to myself that I'm doing this for a reason. And I want to stay healthy and feel healthy. And I hear every day about my husband and I are still in contact with a lot of the support groups we were a part of during all of this, and we keep hearing about people like relapsing or having things happen, and I don't want that for myself. And I really believe that if I keep feeding my body the nourishment that it needs and all of the good stuff versus kind of the processed things that have lots of chemicals and other toxins in them, that my body can stay strong and fight off any cancer that might come up.
Yeah. And that is your belief. You have that belief.
That is my belief.
Yeah.
So that's definitely why I stick to it.
Yeah. Well, you have, I always talk about finding your why, like, why do you want to do this? And you have a pretty big why and a why that you can really, sounds like, get behind. Do you ever get any pushback or anything from your family, your friends, your coworkers, your, community for doing this?
Yeah, my family, I do definitely, it's not like anybody's mean to me about it, but they just don't eat the same way. And that's fine. Like, I'm not going to make anybody eat the same way that I eat. But holidays can be a little stressful because I have to bring my own food, which is not a huge deal, but sometimes it's nice to just show up somewhere and not have to bring it, but I do it for myself and my own health. And that's, that's just what I do. So I just kind of have accepted the fact that I bring my own food most of the time for holidays, and that's really okay. So
yeah. Yeah. And that's it's a great point. Like sometimes that can be challenging and that can be hard. And then it's like, and sometimes that's okay. Like you've done harder things than bringing your own food to Thanksgiving, you know what I mean? Or whatever holiday, like you've been through much, much harder things. So I imagine that, yeah, I mean, it can be a challenge. And if you have it, and that's why like having a really good why that you really believe and like that's why it's so helpful, because during the times that it is challenging, it's like tapping back into that. But it does take courage and it does take being brave. And I really commend you for committing to yourself and really doing this like for yourself, and listening to your gut, listening to your intuition, and having integrity to follow through with that. I think that's something that really needs to be applauded. So I think that you're just kick ass, basically.
Thank you.
So okay, two things. One, how often do you go do your like labs and your numbers?
Every 3 months.
Every 3 months. And do you have that same doctor? So you kind of let your first doctor go, or that one doctor go, and then you hired another doctor, you went with another doctor. Is that the same person you have been with for up until now?
She left, but I have a different doctor now.
Okay. And are they supportive of your choices?
Well, I guess I haven't really specifically talked to my current doctor about what I eat. But she's very into alternative medicine. Like I was getting these leg cramps from something called graft versus host disease, and she recommended a supplement that I could try, which I never heard of before. And I was like, wow, I've never had a doctor offer something like that before. It's usually a pharmaceutical, so I was very surprised, and it helped too. So I do really love her. I think that she would be supportive of it if I told her that I was eating this way. And I had a nutritionist not too long ago that had originally told me when I was getting my bone marrow transplant that she wanted me to eat meat. And I was like, no, I can't, I won't eat meat. And now the same nutritionist a few years later is telling me that she is very supportive of my whole food plant-based diet, and she thinks it's great. And so that's just interesting. I think maybe she learned more about it or something recently. So that's kind of cool, actually.
Yeah, maybe she watched Forks Over Knives or caught on to some Dr. Greger, or read some books. That's really interesting. That's super interesting. So you kind of mentioned that sometimes you read books to kind of remind yourself. I'm putting words into your mouth. You didn't say these exact words, but to kind of remind yourself and reaffirm like why you're doing this. And I think that's a really great thing to do for anybody listening. Like if you start out kind of, okay, for whatever reason, whatever your why is, eating a whole food plant-based diet. And if you've been doing it for a little while and you feel yourself kind of like going back into old eating patterns and habits, I think reading those books, watching those documentaries can be a really powerful thing to like, oh yeah, that's why I do this, because we kind of like forget and we do our thing. And those books can be really good kind of tethers. Do you have any favorite books that you've read or documentaries that you've watched?
I'm trying to remember what they're called. I think it's called Vegucated. You heard of that one?
Mm-hmm.
I really like that one. I don't know why. I just kind of like how the whole thing goes, and it's running with all these different people trying a vegan life, and I don't know. It's just interesting. That one's good for me. I also like Forks Over Knives. Mm-hmm. I'm liking on some of the other ones I've watched, but there's a book that I'm reading right now that's kind of like it's my recent one that I'm trying to get myself back into the groove again, but have you heard of Chris Beat Cancer?
Yes.
I know. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm reading his book right now, and it's got a lot of good tidbits in it, lots of scientific studies, and that really interests me too. So I've been really enjoying reading that.
Yeah. So the other thing I was going to ask you about was that, okay, so so you get lab numbers every 3 months, and so far, every time you've gone, it's been good. Yeah.
Yep. I just have a few issues with my high triglycerides because of the
Yep.
medication that I'm on,
Yeah.
but I'm finally able to taper that medication. So hoping those numbers will start to go down now.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. If you were to talk with somebody who is in a similar situation as yourself, maybe with cancer, maybe with something else going on, what advice would you give them just from what you've been through in your own experience?
I think, I don't know, the first thing that's coming to me right now is just to, like, right away figure out your reason, the reason that you want to live. That's seriously the first thing I would say, because that was like, that changed everything. As soon as I found my reason to continue living, I was like, I feel like that just shifted everything. And so I think that that's, if someone is diagnosed with cancer, like, make sure you have a really strong why of why you're surviving. And that will push you to the next step, which is you might have to make some very big life changes. But if you have your big why of why you're going to live and why it's important for you to live, it's going to be so much easier to make those changes. Like, for me, it was really easy to change over to eating healthier, and having, going from raw vegan to whole food plant-based and sticking with it. It was easy because of, I knew I had a why. I know why I'm here. I know that I'm meant to be here. And that was the biggest shift for me. So.
Oh, you just gave me goosebumps all up and down my arm. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's so powerful. And how often do we stop and, okay, why do I want to be here? Right? Because so many of us were just so busy and doing, even with the diagnosis. I know that going through this with my sister, like, when she was diagnosed with breast cancer recurrence, like, the amount of things that she had to do, she was so busy, right? With, like, the paperwork and the scheduling and the appointments. It's like, it can put you in just a tailspin. So taking a moment to pause and, like, figure out, yeah, like, why do you want to be here? I think that's beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to share with us? Is there any favorite recipes of yours or favorite meal plans of yours that you make over and over that are, like, comforting and that help you kind of, like, stick to this way of eating? I mean, I know that you're a Plant Field Life member, and I know that you get our recipes and meal plans, but is there any of your, like, favorites you can tell people about?
Yeah, one of my all-time favorites is the Simple Peanut Love meal plan.
Yeah.
It's easy to throw together, and I feel like everything is just so super tasty in there. And my husband really likes it too, so that's also a bonus. And of course, I'm blanking on all the other ones I like. I know I really like Canadian Harvest. That's one I like to make every fall. So that's actually, I'm going to make that in November, so I'm excited.
And we just came out with a simple one of that too. Like,
yeah, I saw that.
So maybe you can try that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, if you think of any more, email me, and I will put them in the show notes as well, links to those. But I know, like, on the spot, it's kind of, there's so many good ones.
Yeah.
So much fun.
I actually have a list in my phone. I can just send you that.
Yeah. Or, you know what I did recently is I made a magic meal planner with all of my, like, top favorites. And I just, like, categorized them with, like, soups, dressings, grains, casseroles, desserts, stuff like that. And I've been adding to that. That's been super fun. So
awesome.
I don't know. If you want to try it out, it's kind of good. Okay. Well, is there anything else? Are we good? Are we complete? I'm so, like, I really thank you for your time and for sharing this and for sharing your story. I think that it's really important to get this out there, and for whatever, I mean, people can take from it different things, and maybe this route is for people. Maybe they do really want to try it. Maybe they're not open to trying it, but in any event, this is your experience. This is your life. And I think it's really powerful to share your story. So I really thank you.
Yeah. I just want to say I just know that I'm here to assist people to heal themselves, and that's kind of what I eventually found as my purpose to be here. And so that's why I continue doing this. That's why I want to keep staying here and living in my most healthy and best self. So
That's beautiful. I think, like, and what an example, if you've been through this, then it seems almost like a natural extension that if you've been through it, there's no one better to help other people going through it than you.
yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. And this is, and you're doing it even just by being here, even by talking to me, so thank you again. And, I wish you all the very, very best. And I think that you're kick-ass, and thank you.
Thank you, Molly.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to, pause record. I'll just keep recording. And Luann, when you edit this, just edit this part out. Have you read, Between Two Worlds?